Hi, everyone. Welcome to Opera Next Gen's Demystifying Artist Management webinar with Mr. Justin Werner. I'm Calabria Webb. I am the Director of Education and Outreach for Opera Next Gen, and we're super excited to have you here today. I will not be before you too long. I will introduce our special guest. And just as a courtesy, please remember to keep yourself on mute. And also, please feel free to use the hand raising function or the chat for questions, and they will be acknowledged at the appropriate time. So, I am going to, as I said, introduce our special guest. So, Justin Werner is an operatic professional with extensive experience in production, education, and artist representation. Mr. Werner is the founder and president of Stratagem Artists in 2018, which cultivates and represents a select roster of operatic artists through artist-driven collaboration. Between 2014 and 2018, Mr. Werner was a co-founder and artist manager at Corey and Werner Artist Management. Mr. Werner gained his initial artist management experience at IMG Artists, where he served as an artist management intern. Mr. Werner earned his BM in vocal performance from Boston University and his advanced certificate in vocal performance from the Aaron Copland School of Music at Queens College. Mr. Werner is also proud to be the chair of the On-Site Opera Artistic Advisory Council. Everyone, please give a welcome Opera Next Gen Zoom round of applause for Mr. Justin Werner.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. It's always weird to sit through these things and listen to your own bio. I'm Justin. It's nice to meet you all. Thank you for being here. Yes, as the title says, demystifying artist management, something that I think is not explained at any level. You just sort of are expected to figure it out. And, I get emails all the time from singers who are just looking for answers to what can be really simple questions, but are given the runaround by, everybody. So, I'm here to just be as transparent as possible. I really am an open book. Being a singer, being a producer, interning at a large management firm, and then starting my own boutique. It's been a wide range of experiences that I've had, both good and bad. And I think artist management can be so straightforward. It can be really, as I said in our tagline, artist driven. And I think there is this preconception about, unless you're a managed singer, you're not a real singer, or unless you're with a certain agent, you haven't made it, or, once I get a manager, my career is made. And none of those things are true. There is such a variety of experiences for people to have. I think there are certain yeses and nos that you should look for, but truly every experience is so unique, and Stratagem is not the right fit for every singer or director or conductor or composer. I need to not forget my non-singer friends, as that's a pretty new wing of our company. So, I always wanted to help my colleagues get to places where I didn't think I was going to get as a singer. Even in college, I started producing. It was an organization with a really bad name, so we're just going to leave it at that. But I did some scenes programs for my undergraduate colleagues who are not getting as much performance opportunity as perhaps they needed. Right after undergrad, founding an opera company, running it in New York for 5 seasons, all to service and aid my colleagues to, get to that next level, whatever that next level is. And I find in artist management to get to work with a really curated group of singers, honestly, that I get to curate and believe in and, really go to bat for. It's the dream. It really is the job that synthesizes my skill set the best. I think it's the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done in a professional sense. And it's fun. I think that if you leave this webinar with one thing, none of us make enough money in this business to be miserable. It's just not an option. It's not the only way to do it. And I am, not that any of you are going to quit singing, because I'm sure you're all amazing singers, but I was much less happy being a performer than I ever was being a producer or being an artist manager. I get more joy from seeing my clients make Met debuts than if I ever made a Met debut, if I were so lucky, which I did not have that skill set. So, I think there's so much we can talk about how we find artists, what manager is right for you, when's the best time to start reaching out to people. It really is a wide variety of questions, but I really want this to be a collaborative effort and me not just talking at you for an hour. So I really preface this by saying there are no stupid questions. When I get emails from prospective singers that perhaps don't have the correct materials or or are folks who just aren't ready for that step, I have to go back to my grad school self and say, would I have known the answer to these questions? And while I was in grad school, I was running an opera company. I had these experiences outside of performing. And the answer was no. And I had really good mentorship. And I had people who really encouraged me to explore other sides of the business, but it's just not taught at any, traditional academic level. And I think in the last 5 years, artist managers are getting into schools more. I work at Manus now, giving consultations to the graduate and artist diploma students, which I think is an invaluable experience for them, just to get to talk to a manager and see where they are leaving an academic environment. And it's not juries anymore. There's so much flexibility and repertoire and career building and so many different paths to being a professional singer that aren't just undergrad, grad school, summer young artist program, full year young artist program, and then I'm a star. Like that works for some people, but it's not the be all end all. So, I know some of you and you're at very sort of different parts in your careers, but I think, I just want to make this as universal as possible and as transparent as possible. So I leave it to you for questions. And I will call on people. Yes, Luis.
So my question is just when do you start and how do you go about it? What's that first step as a performer, as a singer, to reach out?
Yeah, that's the question, right? When is that step? And there's no age, there's no right answer, honestly. It's when you feel like you can't manage the career that you have. I think it's a very rare singer that needs management in school. I think it's a very rare singer who needs a manager in a young artist program. But it's when you start getting inquiries that perhaps you can't handle on your own, that you feel uncomfortable negotiating, if you're not getting auditions for certain houses that you feel like you're at the level of. And I think the biggest thing is self-identifying where you are in your career. And not, Luis, not you specifically, but everyone here,
Yeah.
right? Like, am I getting into young artist programs that my peers with management are? Am I getting asked to do main stage roles at a certain level of company? What is my teacher saying? What is my coach saying? And I think there are such a wide variety of teachers, some who are so nurturing that perhaps it's harmful and they give very unrealistic expectations of the business. And on the opposite side, people who are never satisfied and it's never enough. And you're a terrible singer and you're never going to make it. So, I think it's self-assessing what you need on your team. And, for me at Stratagem and for my team, we are only one tool in the toolbox. We do not replace the toolbox. I am not your voice teacher. I'm not your coach. With my background in singing, I know enough if something is egregious or, if we're hearing something, I'm happy to share that feedback, but I definitely don't replace those people. So, it's building that, sort of safe space, cocoon, to tell you where you are. And most importantly, like, we are constantly looking, we're watching competitions, we're watching artist programs, we're attending school shows, we're just out there. And most importantly, my roster tells me all the time, my friend is really good, you should take a listen. I heard this singer and they were a young artist at the show I did. They're great. You should give them a call. And even if we're not quote unquote looking for that singer, I have a constant rolling database, not only on Google Drive, but in my brain, of singers who I want to keep an eye on, of singers who I find interesting. And it's not only about the instrument, it's about being a good actor, it's about being a good colleague, it's about having something unique to say. And I'm sure we'll get into that with other questions. But the old adage of don't get a manager until you have something to manage is definitely correct, but I just don't think it's the whole package. So I guess that's a roundabout way of saying there is no right answer until you as an individual artist feel like a manager will supplement what you do. And that is so different for people. There are singers who want a manager right out of school, right out of young artist programs to, shepherd them through competitions. And then there are singers who have 40-year careers with no manager, singing at the best houses in the world. And our roster ranges from 25 to 65. And I think that's really interesting. It keeps me on my toes. I actually represent my undergrad voice teacher, which is a hoot. And truly, like, he is someone at 18. I sat in the studio and sang Danza Danza, and he was someone I really admired and someone I still admire. But to sort of build his career after he was in the Houston studio and after he had a manager for years and then stopped singing and now is coming back. I mean, that's so much different than taking someone from a young artist program and getting them those first main stage gigs. So there's never a right or wrong time, but I think self-assessment is a really important thing.
Thank you.
Of course.
Could you talk a bit about the audition process?
For a manager, correct?
Yes.
So it totally depends. There are some of my colleagues who have sort of open Yap Tracker auditions. I will say that we at Werner, my previous firm, had those days, and they're long days. I'm very lucky now to be able to be picky. The roster is about 62, and that's about the size where we want to be, where I feel like we have enough singers to cover the needs of a wide variety of companies, but also that they're getting the individualized attention to really build the career and not just be another number on a roster. And that sweet spot is all over the place. There are firms with 2 people on them, there are firms with hundreds, and that doesn't mean they're good or bad. It just means they are what they are. And especially what people call boutiques. I mean, it could be 1 client to hundreds. It's not about size, it's about corporate structure. It's about action steps. So, we usually are reaching out to singers to sing for us, but we do get people emailing us cold saying XYZ recommended me to sing for Stratagem. I can bring these things to the table. What do you think? We've had countless singers reach out, especially during COVID, as we all are sitting around on our computers looking for that next step. And we've only added 7 or 8 singers during the pandemic, which is difficult listening to videos and judging people not live. And that's another story. But what we do at Stratagem is we have an hour audition session in New York where it's a working session. We're giving feedback, we're talking about repertoire, we're stopping and starting. We want to see how a singer reacts to our feedback because we are constantly calibrating. There's never perfect. And then we go out and drink a coffee or a beer, their choice, and talk to them about why or why not we're going to take them and what we can do for their career. And it's a pitch. And I think singers often feel like they're pitching managers alone. Like, we're also pitching singers. I mean, I'm competing with colleagues for a lot of the same artists. And I think for me, it's self-identification of who I can help and who I'm the right fit for and what the personality is. There are singers who want execute my contracts and leave me alone. Like that's not my style. I want to be super hands-on. I want to constantly be chatting. Just it's a continuing conversation. And if someone is so set in their ways that they don't want any feedback, I don't think that's a client for me. And there's plenty of clients who are like, Justin's not my style either, and that's fine. Like it really is finding that bullseye and trial and error, and because at least half of our singers, if not more, have had a manager before us, and some of them will leave and go other places. I mean, and that's not a bad thing. It really is a little bit of The Bachelor, finding that right fit, and if it doesn't work on either side, reassessing. So we have that hour session. We go out for a drink of their choice, and then it's a constant conversation about what is the right fit. Do we provide the opportunities, the feedback, the connections to benefit that person in their career? And then we mutually decide and call it a day or not. So during COVID, it's been a little bit more difficult. I'm actually expecting my first child in a couple of weeks, so I have been less in person than usual during COVID. So it is judging people off of videos. It is going back to the Rolodex of post performances and hearing a voice progress over years without having a current snapshot. And I'll say the majority of the singers, the wide majority of singers that we have taken during COVID are people who myself or one of my staff members know personally. It would be very hard to cold introduce us to a singer and feel confident that we can service them. Because we're in a weird time in COVID. There's less live auditions. There's more competition than ever. We have companies canceling shows. We have force majeure issues. I mean, it's a cluster. But I think in a way, I feel Stratagem's been able to expand even more during COVID because we've had the time to really assess what we can do. And that's partly why the director, conductor, composer wing was able to open, 6 months into COVID. So it really is a courtship dance between both parties. With Stratagem, we do not divide what singers work with what staff member, because I feel like my staff contributes different opinions and different feedback and different experiences than me. So I want a singer who signs with us to be able to talk to my staff. I feel very confident, taking a couple of weeks off to hang out with my kid, that my staff is going to keep the store open. So, that there has to be trust. Mutual trust is the be all end all. And and I think too, in assessing if an artist is right for us, I want every artist that we sign to be first on my list for something. It can be a certain company, a certain role, a certain composer, a certain style, language, all those things. But if I'm not thinking of someone first for anything, there's a problem. And that's a reason to reassess. And everyone's at different stages of their career, and everyone is, competing in a way. But, our roster is competing against so many other singers and so many other rosters. What I don't want is competition within the roster as much as we can. And the example I use for that is our friend Despina from Cozy. I think at a certain house with a certain conductor or director, you can have sort of an older Marcellina-esque soprano. You can have a young flitty soubrette, or you can have a larger lyric voice, depending on where your floor is. I'm happy to send a company one of each of those, but what I don't want to do is send 3 girls in the same dress, singing the same rep. And I've seen that happen at auditions, and it's uncomfortable. It just, there's so much competition already. Why do you feel like, your manager's pitting people against each other? So, that's always tricky. Who do we put up for what company? What prior experiences mean for that sort of stuff? So we're constantly reassessing as managers as well. And especially during COVID, there's been replacing the dominoes has been a challenge. So yeah, I mean, we're constantly looking, and there are singers who I've heard in a performance, and I go up to them after, I'm like, we should work together. This is why. But that's a very far and few between assessment. And even if it's that initial attraction, there has to be a further conversation about what each party will do for each other. I saw a hand up a second ago. Okay, Jessica.
Hi, yeah. I actually wanted to ask more about that, like what each party does for each other. So, like, how much of it is usually the singer coming back to you and saying, "Hey, I want to audition for this," and you going to the singer and saying, "Hey, I want you to audition for this."
50-50, really. So what happens for managers usually, especially in the November, December hot audition time, is companies will say, hey, managers, we will be in New York these 3 days. We're hearing for these 9 operas or these open roles. It could be something as specific as we lost someone, we're hearing for one specific role, or we're hearing for the rainbow of operatic repertoire. And it's our job as managers to submit our singers for consideration. We send YouTube playlists of all their recordings and Stratagem curated press kit that we edit and keep track of, which I tell singers all the time, you never have to write your own resume. It's a big plus that we do. Thank you to my staff for doing that a lot. And then the company decides who on that list they want to hear. There are ways other than that it works. Some people give each manager an hour, give us who you got. There are private auditions that we set up with people who are in town, where Stratagem will rent a room and get a pianist, and they won't be hearing every roster. They'll just be hearing us. But I have singers auditioning at houses all the time. I tell singers all the time, tell me when you're on vacation. Bring your audition book. If you want to sing, we can probably make it happen. Less during COVID, but we set up when we have singers work at a place like Dallas Opera, let's say, if they have a car, we can have them sing for San Antonio, we can have them sing for Austin, we can have them sing for Houston Grand, sort of fitting those auditions within their schedule, because obviously the gig you're on is most important. And we even do caravans where multiple artists sort of jump on a car and go somewhere. So we are always happy to field requests from singers that say, hey, I want to sing for this project or this company or this person. And we try to do that as best as we can. But sometimes a singer will come to us and say, I want to sing for the Met 2 weeks. And I have to say, I don't think you're ready. This is why. And let's wait for the next season to come along and we'll go from there. And usually, as long as I have a good reason, which I wouldn't make that decision unless I had a good reason, singers are really happy to get that feedback and to have a conversation. So I always want it to be, because no one cares about an artist's career more than the artist. I give me the most compassionate manager out there, and I don't care how much money they make as much as they do. Like it is, there has to be some self-preservation there. So if a singer reaches out to companies, all I ask for is a CC. So I'm not doubling my work by reaching out to the same company with the same information. It's constant communication. So I would never be a manager that says, oh, don't reach out to that person. Like, we'll take care of that for you, stay away. Because they're not hiring Stratagem, they're hiring that individual singer. So, and there's all sorts of variation within that, but that's sort of the basic model. And we, especially during COVID, we needed recordings ASAP. And it was very difficult to make recordings because no pianist wanted to be in a room, no spaces were open. If you don't live in New York or Chicago or San Francisco, like it's not that easy to find someone. And our singers went above and beyond and made recordings, and we built a collaboration with a wonderful video production company called Conduit Studios that I would say half of our videos on our website are made by them. 2 singers who get it and are affordable and really high quality. And those got people major jobs. But like, I can't drag a singer into a studio and have them make a recording. There are singers I'm still chasing for recordings. And I have to say, I cannot represent you as accurately as I can without recordings from, the last 6 months. But also understanding from a financial standpoint, we're in COVID, we're working less in general. Singers don't have money to record every 2 weeks. I wish they did. I wish we all had studios in our house that we could record every day. Every time you make a technical breakthrough with your teacher, I get to hear it. And I think it's building that context. So I'm very proud that in Stratagem's history, a staff member has been at every main stage audition in New York for all of our singers. And that's something I want to keep going for as long as we can. Because I think that context of hearing a singer 8, 10, 15 times in a season for some, I hear them at their best, I hear them at their worst, I hear them with new rep, with old rep. And then I can go to a company and say, I heard this, what did you hear? But also to when an audition season's over and we have a sort of postmortem, what are you going to do to practice? What rep are you going to work on? What do we agree on? What do we not? And again, I just need singers who trust us, and I trust them to make the right decisions. And there are some times when there is such a divide in a repertoire conversation that it's time to part ways, and that's cool because it's not my career. I quit singing long ago. So I do think the more proactive the artist, the easier my job is, for sure.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Of course. I'm gonna start calling on people. Truly open book, no bad questions, like no judgment in the Zoom room. Ariel.
Hi.
I have a question.
Go ahead. I can go next if you like.
Okay, let's do
Ladies
Ariel
first.
Yeah, and then Olivia will get to you. Please.
This feels sort of. I was trying to find a more specific way to ask this, but obviously, so many things are changing. Like mid-COVID, hopefully post-COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like for those artists who aren't quite ready for management, maybe in like the yap sphere of things, the kind of just your general opinion on the importance of that stage and like what to work towards building in this kind of brave new world. It's like very generic, but hopefully that's somewhat of a question.
So I was a former self-producer. I have a soft spot in my heart for self-production. But I find with self-production, the artistry often is not at a level that is applicable. And that's not everybody. So my main thing would be around the artist you want to be. Work with the best pianist you can, take acting lessons with the best director you can. You know, there's so much score study that we can do and just pre-prep. You know, there are so many moving parts in the US opera scene right now. We got a call on Friday for one of our sopranos to step in and cover a major bel canto title role at the Met. And they asked the first question, has she done the role? Is it ready? This starts in 2 weeks. We got to go. And, you know, this is someone who not only did the role, but has been working it up as something that we were targeting specifically to be sort of a bread and butter role for her. And, you know, if I said she doesn't know it, never looked at it, that job's not happening. So, you know, within your FOC, there are things that are produced all the time. And I am a lover of new music. I think America does new music better than anybody else. You can quote me on that. There's such a diverse pool of composers out there. There's something for everybody. For people who say, I don't like new music, go listen to someone else. Like there is so much variety. That stuff is the outlier. Mozart and Donizetti and Handel, like they're the standards for a reason. Like, you know, and if you're going to sing the same art as everybody else, you got to say something really unique. So I think in general, opera singers are not the best actors, especially compared to our theater brethren. So do some acting work, take an improv class. I mean, there are a couple of my singers who took acting during COVID and then came to audition season this year, and it was a marked difference. Not only in their auditions, but in them getting hired. And I think that, and Americans in our languages, that's what the Europeans do better than us. Like, work on your languages. Like
Yeah.
we need the crispness of what we get in English diction in all of our languages. So, obviously if you're in a YAP, the key is to get on stage and perform and learn these roles and have them in your back pocket. But, for someone who's not in a program, there's so much self-guided work that I think can be done. And again, curated with your team,
Mhm.
right? Like, are there roles that I should learn? Are there arias that perhaps I didn't look at before that are a dream? And it has to be a combination of both functionality, but also you gotta love it. If I know an artist is doing an aria to fill a requirement, it's 2 seconds. I know, like, oh, you needed a new music piece and you picked the boring, oh, Am I in Your Light's the worst. But there's other choices. The American slot is where we can be creative.
Yeah.
So much stuff. But also, if you get your friend to commission you something, are we as a panel going to know what to listen for? So it's this weird balance. So yeah, I just think make yourself the most attractive artist you can, not only vocally, because I know as a singer, as a baritone to switch to tenor, I was like, I gotta fix my high notes. I gotta fix my high notes. No one's gonna hire me. I'm gonna crack, and then call it a day. But that experience, we've had 4 baritones turn to tenors on my roster, all successfully, and that experience has been incredibly helpful in doing that. I mean, one of my best baritones called me into a practice room a year ago in December, and he's like, I have a surprise for you. That he sang Jose, and there's someone who was singing as a baritone at the Met.
Yeah.
And he was like, are you mad? I'm like, you're going to make us so much more money. You're going to make yourself so much more money. And, he's singing lead roles less than a year after his transition. It's really, but that was self-guided. There's nothing I could do to wave a magic wand and be like, your passaggio's up a 5th now.
Sure.
So, I do, of course, we all have improvements we can make vocally, and there's those milestones, right? But I just think there's more than that to not just pound out F in a practice room, like I know some of our colleagues do. So I think that's the best answer, and try to get feedback from companies, and feedback from people that you trust. What can I fix? What can I work on? And there's always something.
Great. Thank you.
Of course. Angel.
Thank you for remembering me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I'm really excited to have heard all this, and the information you've given is very, very poignant. Lots of notes taken for sure. One question I have is a long-term kind of developmental thing as you're thinking of a career. I know there are a lot of variables that play into this question. Things like a European debut, how to prepare to travel and that sort of thing, and how to incorporate management into that process and strategically plan, because I'm at that point of learning how to, navigate those challenges of going internationally. How does that play a factor in management and choosing? And also one question I have apart from that is agent versus manager question. So it's a 2-part question: how to prepare to handle for your management to handle international work, and also how to what is the career or industry distinction between an agent and a manager, would you say?
So just the second part first. So I think that's an easier question than a career trajectory question. So I make this joke all the time with my dear clients. In theater world, but especially in TV and film, where they're making a lot more money than we are, you can afford a manager and an agent, because I do feel like there's a huge difference. An agent is the person who is the administrative backbone. They are making sure contracts are legally binding. They are negotiating your fees. It's very sort of tangible, black and white, definable things. Where I think when you get into manager land, it's career trajectory, it's conversations, it's procurement of work, it's more in the ether. Like every manager will give you a different answer for what they do. And I think for an agent, it's sort of more straightforward. Of course, there's variation in that. But we in opera are expected to do both. You know, it's very important when I negotiate fees and talk to producers and make those connections, but that's not the fun part for me. The fun part is building that career trajectory. It's talking about rep, it's seeing successes and navigating failures. And it is that constant communication with an individual artist on what is financially feasible, on what is likely in auditions, and what feels correct to the singer. Because there is no right and wrong, there is no path. It's what the artist wants. And to segue into your European question, I think that makes a huge difference in your manager that you choose, because the European system is much less exclusive than the US system. There's a lot more sort of regional, not bias, but you know, there are managers in Germany who do one province in Germany. There are UK managers who concentrate on the UK. And I mean, for the US, if I concentrated on Texas, that wouldn't work. Like we have to have a wide arching reach in this country. And there are plenty of other differences. The commission paid retainers, by the way, don't pay a retainer ever. You know, there are many differences, not only between European and American managers, but between just our colleagues. So, you know, you want to pick a manager who has the European connections that you want, if that's the goal. You know, and very honestly, Stratagem concentrates 99% of our efforts in US and Canada. But because of the skill and connections of our artists, we have singers making ENO debuts and Royal Opera House debuts and La Scala debuts and things of that nature. But it's definitely not, if I cold called a C house in Germany, I'm going to have much less success than if I cold called a C house here. And that's just, you know, my colleagues on the ground there, they speak the language. They're constantly at those shows. I mean, everyone wants receipts, right? Like I pride myself in showing up and introducing myself and earning my keep. And I am not going to be the guy in London because I'm not there. So, you know, and that's just a conversation with the manager who you choose to work with. What are your connections and what can you do for me? And if someone came to me and said, I want you to set up a European audition tour for me as the first and foremost thing, that's not me. So I think that is a very important thing to discuss with whoever you're working with. Did that answer your question?
Yes, you did entirely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Olivia.
Hello. So I'm at the point in my career where I'm starting to feel more comfortable and confident in reaching out to management. And so for cold emails, when the opportunity arises, what would be what do you think is more effective when you receive a cold email? Like when you've received them, has certain verbiage or certain materials being sent basically sparked a moment of aha for you in particular?
So I think it never has to be a cold call, right? We all know singers on every management firm, or you can make that connection through a teacher or through a coach. And I'm infinitely more likely. So number one, I'm very proud that I respond to every email, even if they're, dear sir, madame, here's 19 recordings of, you know, it's just a mess. Like I at least try to send a courteous no thank you. But to warrant a, you know, a better response, there's no other way to say it. Like number one, do your research. Like we get singers all the time who say, these people told me that I would be a great fit for your roster. And then I call the people on my roster and they're like, that person didn't reach out to me. Like, don't do that. It's like, don't list people on your resume who don't know you. It's a mess. Most importantly, don't misspell people's names, because I've been Justin Wiener on resumes, Justin Weiner. It's great. And then they hand me the resume and it's wild. So I think, number one, like, be really transparent about what you can offer to a roster, where you fit. Do your research about what kind of people in your FOC are already on the roster, what level of company they're working at. Like, you want to be not the tippy top and not the bottom, like somewhere in the middle, or at least, moving to the top. Everyone wants progression. And I think if I can't provide a singer progression, I'm not going to take them. But I think that the most egregious and common mistake that singers make is they send entire albums worth of recordings. And it's just this very unclear mess of what I should be listening for. Because in general, I'm not going to spend 2 hours, diving deep into someone's website. Like, if I'm impressed by, 1 or 2 tracks, that maybe leads me to the next step. So, send a resume, send a bio, couple recordings, and then you wait, and you might not get responses from people. You might, but I think the person who responds in a positive and prompt manner is probably someone who's worth exploring further. So there's no magic words. There's no, every time I hear this, all right, I hire someone. But I think I just want to see thoughtful and intelligent reasons why I should consider working with this person for the rest of their careers, because that's my goal, right? It doesn't work out all the time, but I want to represent these singers until they retire or I retire, whoever comes first. So yeah, just be smart, do your research. Plenty of people will know me really well and be able to give advice on what I respond to best, not only in this webinar, but just in life. And, I would really put yourself in the producer's shoes, right? If I received this email as a producer, would I be interested in exploring this person more? Would I think they have something very unique to say? And if the answer is no, then rewrite the email. So yeah, I think that's sort of the general parameters to what we're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Jessica.
Yeah. So I have another question about what advice you have about the people who should be on your team, like before you even go to management, or when you do feel ready to go to management, like what kind of team should we be building? And I know for myself personally, it's a little strange because I graduated and then very soon after the pandemic happened. And so any opportunities I'd had basically went away. And so now I've gotten older, getting close to aging out of some of those young artist opportunities. But but then it's been weird because I haven't been able to actually do auditions or things like that. So it's been very strange. And so I want to make sure that I get some advice from you about who should I be surrounding myself with since I'm out of school, but also in this weird in-between stage.
It's singer purgatory. I mean, especially,
Yeah.
Especially for women, it's a more crowded pack, and lyric baritones. For any lyric baritones out there, I'm sorry. The count aria is not enough. There's just more of you. If you're a Ina Etta soprano, if you're especially a pansroll mezzo, or if you're a lyric baritone, you are competing against hundreds and hundreds of people singing your rep and doing the same exact thing. So I have something unique to say. So number one, a voice teacher in general is the most important, both from a technical standpoint, but also a career trajectory standpoint. Because I think if you are a good teacher, you have a pulse of what's happening in the world, not only how to make the best oo vowel. And I think I had a lot of trial and error with teachers where I had someone attached to the industry but wasn't working for me technically. Then I had someone who was working technically but had no clue what was happening in the world. And there has to be a balance. And secondly, I think finding a really good coach who isn't just like, that was great, let's do it again. Like someone who's going to dive into your weaknesses. Like if you're, going to sing a lot of Italian rap, find an Italian. If you're going to, sing a lot of Russian rap, like find someone who specializes in that language. And, then the rest is just like friends and mentors and, having people who are invested in your career and you as a person. Because there are plenty of singers who I don't represent, but I consider friends. And if they ask me a question, I'm more than happy to field it, on a sort of an official business standpoint. So, it doesn't have to be, I have these two people in my orbit and no one else can be in the orbit. But I also think singers tend to overcommit. And I have 7 different voice teachers and 4 coaches. It's just too many cooks. So I try to keep the teams as streamlined as possible because I think that's how you learn. And yeah, I mean, it's singing for companies and then they take a shine to you and they keep hiring you and you ask them like, how do I get out of this, cycle of only working for the same 2 companies? Like, and it's so different for every individual artist. As someone who went to school in Boston is a vicious cycle. People don't leave. Like it is. And it's not an opera town. It's a new music town. It's a Baroque town. It's an orchestral town. But like, BLO is not the first thing you think of when you go to Boston. You think of the schools and you think of BLO. Yeah, BSO, I mean, sorry. So, I've tried to have my clients escape Boston and I only have one left and I'll get her out of there eventually. But there are so many cities in the country where there is enough performance experience to sort of get by. But when we see a full resume of only one city, that's a huge red flag. Or only one company or only one, even one role. Because repeat roles are great, but like if you've only sung Musetta for 6 years, like it's a red flag. So I know it's sort of contradictory, but we are looking for a well-rounded singer, but also someone who has something very specific to say. And I do think those things can be simpatico.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. Ariel?
Yeah, I have a question. I have a question specifically about like what your dreams are for Stratagem. Obviously, you guys have, expanded the roster into new areas, and I'm just curious, like what that looks like, and what you kind of dream of in the business and everything.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm at a point with Stratagem where if you had told me January 1st, 2018, when we first started, that you will be at this place in 2022, I would have said you were crazy. Like, I mean, it really has progressed and grown at a pace that is unbelievable to me. And the artists that we have taken huge leaps and bounds, not only in sort of financial solvency, but in artistry. And there are singers who I deeply admire, who I never thought would be interested in being managed by me, who now are our most loyal clients. And it just continues to roll. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't think Stratagem was the right way to manage. And we're not the only ones doing it. But I think we have a moral compass and a strategy that I'm really proud of. Number one, I think the dream is just keeping this fun, right? It's continuing to make these debuts in major companies, to continue to grow, for me to get back on the road. It would be really fun. I'm very lucky that my staff has been, jumping all over the country. And, it's never just that one, when I have a Met debut and a lead role, I'll be done. When I have a WNO debut, I'll be done. Like it's constantly continuing to sustain that energy. And I think, I want to continue helping to train the next generation of artistic administrators in the field. I'm very proud of our interns, who have gone on to bigger and better things, and are some of the most stand-up people I know in the industry, because I think it's just as important to train the next generation of great singing as it is the next generation of great managers. And right now artist management is not the youngest group, nor the most diverse. And I think we actually have one of the most diverse slates of great singing in the US that we've ever had. And that is not reflected in who is making artistic decisions, in who is making managerial decisions. And I think anything I can do for that, I am more than happy to help guide and make a little bit of an impact. So yeah, I mean, it's not growth, right? I never want our roster to be 200 people. I think that'd be really stressful. But I want to continue to get our artists that we already have to that next level, and to sign artists that we really believe in.
Thank you.
Of course. Luis.
Yeah, so that what you were just talking about right here before you finished your thought was actually my next question. For somebody that's interested in pursuing artist management as a, getting into that as a business, how, what's a way to start? I mean, are there internship programs or?
There are internship programs. We have a good one at Stratagem, but I mean, most management firms have those programs. And I think it's just being curious and having those conversations. Very honestly, I'd be happy to have a conversation because I think we need to start cultivating those skill sets. So what I would say for anyone on this call who's considering that, I give a little assignment to prospective managers that I think weeds out the brains that perhaps aren't the right fit. Take a piece of paper, write down 8 to 10 singers you admire, what they sing now, what they'll sing in the future, and why you love them. What is it about them as an artist that grabs you? Because any singer on my roster, if you had said, what makes Chelsea Baszler unique, I'd be able to give you a laundry list. If I can't, I'm not doing my job. So, I really think even in grad school, I started cultivating my ears to not only hear when I was cracking above the staff, but like what my colleagues were doing. Where is that career path going? And I think for me, especially running an opera company, at lunch, like I would talk to singers and be like, what is the next step? I don't want this to be the final place you sing. And that curiosity and those comments and those conversations have informed me to, be where I am. So I see two, one current and one former Stratagem intern on this call right now. Curiosity and knowledge about repertoire can be trained, but the love for what we do has to be innate. And it's too hard of a life to not love it. It's funny because all my singers are stressing out about 22, 23, and everyone who complains to me, I'm like, well, I feel it for 60 of you. So only 10% of the amount, but I still have 60 of your careers on my chest right now. So, there has to be that true love for the creation of this art form. Look, like opera's the best. We have every art form put into one show, and we get to sing the most beautiful music ever written, tell these stories that are timeless. Oh my God, if I see one more Bohème in some weird location, just do Bohème, just do the show. But I mean, to tell these stories that are fabulous and universal. And I think we get to be around the best people in the world. The singing community is the best, the kindest, most compassionate, like loving people. And I really am honored to represent the artists that I get to represent. So, if you feel like you have a good set of ears and you want to, I don't feel like it's a sacrifice, but to sacrifice your own performance for the others, everyone has that aha moment. I had one in grad school trying to sing the Jose aria and just crashing and burning. But then a couple years later, we had a singer make her Met debut, stepping into Queen of the Night last minute. I sat in the last row of that orchestra and I wept like a baby. And that was more excitement and love and joy than I ever felt as a performer. And that was a moment where I was like, this is right for me. Not that I didn't before, because I was a manager for a few years before that. But everyone has those moments of clarity that are showing us the path that we're in the right direction. So, yeah, it's exciting that you're interested, and I will say for all of the trials and tribulations, it's a lot of fun. Anybody else as we wind down?
Well, if not, I am happy to jumpstart that round of applause for you and your expertise, your knowledge. I got a lot from that. Even I love to listen and learn as well. So thank you so much for stopping by. I see we got some rounds of applause in the chat, or excuse me, in the participants bar as well. So thank you so much. I do want to take this time to remind everyone that this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel. And I also want to call some special attention to upcoming events with Opera Next Gen finishing out this season. So next month, March 27th, it's a Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time again. We will have the Generation Now webinar focused on opera translation and audience engagement, followed by April 23rd. Join us for our end of the season celebration, which is titled Looking Back. So, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Again, this will be on YouTube. And thank you so much, Justin. It was amazing.
Thank you. Looking forward to hearing from some of you.
All right, everyone. So thank you. We will log off shortly. Take care and be safe.